very positive, but I did the he's going to take some
We're going to go ahead and get started. For those that I don't know or you don't know me, I'm Tommy Bryant, and I appreciate y'all coming. I never expected on an ugly night like this to have this much of a turnout. And I have a very small speaking part in this, because I don't know nearly as much as probably you do about it. However, if we can't answer your questions tonight, we will collectively find out and get back with you and answer your questions later. Now, one thing that Judge Cashin has asked me to do, and I don't think it's going to be an issue with anybody, but if you're packing heat, he wants you to go put it in the car. And I didn't think we'd have that joke. Well, anyway, I'm going to turn it over to the police chief and let him visit with you. We've got signs up here that if you need someone to take a picture of them to see what a legal sign has to look like if you have a business. So with that, I'm going to get out of your way. All right. Come on in, sir. Once again, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Kind of like the sheriff, I anticipated some folks, and I was hoping this room would be big enough, but we're just about out of room. As everybody knows, on January 1, some of our laws pertaining to gun laws changed here in Texas. And so we added open carry. But we knew there was a lot of questions being asked, so the sheriff and I, and District Attorney Nash, County Attorney Pence, kind of wanted to get together and have an opportunity for us to give you some information and then answer some questions, because I know there's a lot of questions on everybody's mind. And for the last several months, there's been a lot of questions on our minds. And we've sifted through the bills and the different laws, trying to figure it all out and how it's all going to work together. If you've ever looked at law in Texas, you understand we like codes in Texas. And I don't know, there's what, 35 different codes or so. And so when we wrote these gun laws, we put some of it in a code over here, and we put some in another code here, and we kind of mixed and matched and put it all over the place. So it's taken some time to get out in front of it and try to get it all together. So I put together a few slides to just talk about a little stuff up front, and then we'll just kind of start talking about your questions and some of the questions that have been sent in to us. So, like I said, we created open carry on January 1st. And these are the requirements if you want to open carry. Straight out of the statute, it says that you're required to carry openly in a shoulder or belt holster. And that's exactly what it said, and that's all it said. And so I've already gotten some questions from some folks. You know, well what about this different style of holster? Or what about a different style here? And we're going to have trouble answering that, because that is what the way the statute was written and what the law says. So I can guarantee you, if what you have resembles anything in those photos, you're fine. That is not good. Don't just stick your gun in your pants. That's not going to work. This is a big question that I've been asked a lot, and I know probably the sheriff has, and I've seen it on Facebook. It's being asked a lot. What are the requirements to show your license to law enforcement? And so the question is, if you're a license holder and you're carrying a handgun on or about your person, can a law enforcement officer or magistrate require you to show your handgun license and identifying information? And the answer is yes. I've heard that debated a lot back and forth, both on public forums. There was an amendment towards the end of the legislative session that was repealing that out of the law. The Austin police chief and some others went down to our Capitol and had a discussion. And so that did get put back in, or left in. And so all that says is that if you're carrying a handgun on or about your person, and a peace officer or magistrate demands that you display the identification, that you shall. And there's been a lot of debate on, well, is that only if I'm doing something wrong or anything else? No, that is at any time. But, and the sheriff and I have spent some time discussing this, and I know we both told our folks the same thing. We don't want our folks out there bothering all by the people that are openly carrying their handguns and aren't doing anything. So the training that we gave our folks was, stick with what we've always done, which is you can have a legal reason to be talking to somebody, then stick with that. And so we try to tell them use good judgment and common sense, even though that's still in the law. That's not the way we want to operate here. So kind of the point I want to make with y'all is not everybody stays in Stephenville, Erath County, Texas. We all travel all over the place. And so, I've seen some stuff out on social media where folks are getting pretty torn up about this. I just want to remind you that if you are off somewhere else or wherever, and an officer does ask for your handgun license and your identifying information while you're carrying, please give it to them. If you don't think it's appropriate or you think that they shouldn't be asking or something like that, there's time to discuss that after the fact, or take it up with their supervisor out on the side of the road or wherever it is that they're talking to you in the place to have that argument. So please, if they do ask you, go ahead and give it to them, because that is a requirement under the law. Another little section in there, is can a peace officer disarm you while they're conducting business with you? And yes, that hasn't changed. That's been around ever since we started the concealed handgun licensing in Texas, and that's still the case even with the open carry. And so that statute hadn't changed at all, and it's still there. And so if an officer is conducting some business with you and asks to disarm you while they're doing it, don't be offended by it. Some do, some don't. It kind of just depends on the situation. Where can't you carry? That's kind of an interesting question. So some things that are right off the top. The easiest one, anywhere there's a sign that prohibits either open carry or concealed carry. There's some examples of what those signs look like laying up here. I also we'll see some pictures of a couple here in a minute. So if you see those signs, don't carry in those places. The physical premises of a school and any grounds or buildings on which an activity sponsored by a school is being conducted for passenger transportation, the school bus, whether it's public or private. Now, I think one of the questions we had sent in was about the parking lots of a school. The definition of premises does not, for these purposes, does not include sidewalks, parking lot, or things like that of a school. What you kind of got to pay attention to was it does say any grounds or building on which an activity sponsored by a school is being conducted. So if a school has moved some activity out to a parking lot, maybe like marching band practice or something like that, that's a school activity that's out there on that parking lot, then that parking lot has just become a gun-free zone at that point. But outside of that, no, it doesn't.
So these last two statements apply to both concealed and open?
Yes, sir. On the premises of a polling place on the day of an election or while early voting is in progress. And that should be common sense, but you won't see, there's no requirement in the law that at a polling place they have to have signs up. So that's kind of one of those you're expected to know that, wherever you go vote, don't take your handguns with you, open or concealed.
If you're carrying open, like we're carrying, and for some reason something goes down to you, are we under the same law like a police officer? If the gun's fired, it can be turned over to the police department and let them do their investigation? I mean, if it has to be discharged, is it going to be the same rule?
Yes, absolutely. If you fire your weapon at somebody or you're involved in a shooting situation, it's part of part of that investigation, your weapon would be taken as evidence, just like it would if one of our officers is involved in a shooting. That weapon becomes evidence in part of the case. Come on in, Mr. Perry. This one you're experiencing here tonight, government court or offices utilized by the court, unless the court's given written authorization for people to do it. I haven't yet seen a court or a judge that has given that kind of written authorization. If y'all, and so, we talked with the district judge yesterday, and he said, yes, this is part of the district court and attached to it, so there are no firearms allowed. A racetrack. So I guess you go watch NASCAR, Texas Motor Speedway, I guess that's what we're talking about, maybe horse races.
I think it's aimed at horse races.
Aimed at horse races.
Where gambling.
Okay. Secured area of an airport. Now, they did make a little change in that statute this year, that if there's somebody accidentally goes into that secured area of the airport, goes through the checkpoint and sets off the detectors or whatever, that the airport police have to give you an opportunity to put your weapon up, check it, your bag, or whatever, before any kind of action is taken. If you refuse to do that, then bad things will probably ensue. There's another one I didn't put up, but if you're ever going to Huntsville, Texas, and you're going to the Huntsville unit, because there's an execution going on that day, you can't take a firearm or a handgun within 1,000 feet of the place that an execution begins. My guess is that that distance covers the outside of the walls unit, so the protests that go on down there keeps it a gun-free zone for any protests that occur. Bars or places that receive 51% or more of their sales from alcohol. So Bostock's, City Limits Club probably is a little interesting because it would be split between the bar and the economy, I would imagine. You'll know because they're required, those places are required to have stickers before that you can see going in that designate them as a 51% or more business. So you'll be able to see those signs. These are more examples of the kind of signage that you should see. And that's something, if you're a business owner that's in here and you're contemplating putting up signs, whether it be banning both or just banning open or just banning concealed, whichever way, understand your signs have to look like the examples here or something up there. The language in those laws is very specific and says they dictate what those signs have to say. They have to have the exact language that's written on them. You can, in lieu of signs, have written documentation on a card or a letter or something of that effect that's given out to people. But I think the sheriff and I, and the district attorney and county attorney would all agree that signage is your best, most visible kind of deterrent and more ironclad from a legal sense if we have to take some action to prove that somebody should have seen it or should have had notice about it. We have some handouts that have all this same language in it for you if you want to know what it looks like. A couple interesting things that came about. Of course, the open carry handgun signs, and that law is a brand new statute. But a couple interesting things happened with that one and with the concealed handgun trespass statute. Prior to January 1, if you had a business that had the concealed handgun signs up there and somebody went in with the concealed handgun and got found out and the business wanted to file charges, it was a Class A misdemeanor offense, which was potentially up to a year in jail and cost you a whole bunch of money. January 1, both of these, when somebody goes in violation of them, are now a Class C misdemeanor with a maximum fine of $200, basically a speeding ticket. Unless, after being given notice, they refuse to do something about it, to become in compliance with what the business is asking. I doubt that's gonna be a big issue. There again, I know, visiting with the sheriff, I expect there to be probably some accidents happen with that. You know, there's gonna be some folks that, not that they forget, or they just don't think about it. They hop out of their car and they're open carrying a firearm, and they go off into a business, whether it be a grocery store or some other type of business, without even thinking or remembering that they're open carrying and that place bans it. So kind of our stance and what we talk to our folks about is work with the businesses and work with the person that's happened to, and if it's an accident, it's treated as such. Do what we need to do to help get that person in compliance. And, you know, one of the things that we've stressed to our folks, and, you know, I talked about with our council and our employees at the city, is the legislature with a lot of these laws has been very clear. They want law-abiding Texans with handgun licenses to be able to carry their handguns, whether that's concealed or open carry. And they're very clear about that intent. And so there's, even though we have some laws in some different areas that create some stuff, I think there's an obligation, kind of law enforcement's part, to help work with our citizens and our businesses to keep people in compliance and help people out where the situation calls. And then our vehicles, that's the other question that I've been asked, if anything's, you know, been changed with our vehicles. And so now, can I leave if I'm a license holder, can I leave my gun out in the open in the vehicle? And the answer to that's no. They did not change anything there except for one thing. They said if you're a license holder, it can be in the open if it's in a shoulder or belt holster, just like you were open carrying it if you're out walking around. So that's the only thing they changed. So you can't lay it up on your dash or lay it out on the passenger seat or something like that. And one of the questions we had emailed in, and I'm starting to see more of them, is a lot of people are getting holsters that are made that fit up under their steering columns or the undersides of their dash and putting their pistol in there. That's what you call a gray area. It's a holster. You know, I think one of the things that you're going to see probably in some court cases in the next little bit is some definitions of belt holster that come out of some case law somewhere, because it hadn't been defined. You know, there again, that's where we've asked our officers to use good judgment when they're dealing with those situations. It's going to have to be on a kind of on a case-by-case basis. Some of those, and they're becoming more popular. There again, you have law-abiding citizens that aren't doing anything wrong in that particular incident. Kind of got to think about what the legislature's intent was with passing these statutes. So that's all the stuff I put together for the PowerPoint, trying to hit kind of the main points of our new law. So I have some questions that have been emailed into us. I know you guys have a bunch on your mind, so the floor is yours. We're here to answer. Yes, sir.
If you're, so you got your gun holster, you lay it in the seat right beside you, that's legal, right? It's in the holster, it's secured, but it's in the seat.
I'm going to tell you that is not following what I believe to be the spirit of what the law is. The legislature, and that's something that's been pointed out on multiple occasions, they said that you got to open carry in a shoulder or a belt holster. They did not finish the sentence with attached to your body. So, but I think that was their intent. You know, they didn't want you to put it in a holster and carry it around in your hand. Right. So the intent was they wanted it as part of you.
Okay.
So I think that you need to kind of think that way in your vehicle as well. 'Cause I think that was the spirit of what they intended. Yes, ma'am.
A little bit off the beaten path. Stephenville senior citizens down there,
Uh-huh.
are we going to be seeing people, I doubt that, I can't imagine by wearing them down there to begin with in a holster, but is that
Legal?
legal down there?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
A couple of things happened with, specifically, we'll talk about municipal buildings.
Okay, good.
There was when it comes to concealed handgun law, or concealed handgun carrier, over in the government code, they passed a whole new law pertaining to local governments or political subdivisions of the state called wrongful exclusion of a concealed handgun holder. And it basically sent a message to local government that if you put up signs, these signs, that tell people they can't go in a facility owned, leased, or operated by a municipality, that you're breaking the law. And it's, nobody at the city goes to jail over it, but the Attorney General, if so thought you were in violation, could essentially sue the city through the court. And the first violation is 1,000 to 1,500. The second on the city would be 10,000 to 10,500, and each day is its own violation. So the only place that the city kind of had an option is what we discussed last night at our council meeting. The meetings of a governmental entity kind of have the option of whether they want to put the signs up or not. But outside of that, we have what we call critical infrastructure, our water treatment plants, wastewater facilities. Those are separate, but the rest of our municipal buildings, no.
So otherwise they're gonna be able to, if they're licensed, it's in a holster, they can walk into that senior citizen.
Right. We had the option to put the 3007 signs up,
Okay.
the open, to prevent open handgun.
Okay.
But in that law,
It's-
on the back side of it, they created an exception to that law that said, the place you went with your openly carried handgun that had the signs was a facility owned, operated, or leased by a governmental entity, then the law doesn't apply. So, we could have put the sign there, but we couldn't have enforced it. And so my recommendation to the council was, I don't like bluffing people on stuff, I mean, especially not gun laws. I mean, that's just not an appropriate situation to create opportunity for bad encounters there.
So for city employees who are working in an establishment like that, it's gonna be more important for us to now to be prepared in case someone comes in, what to look for and that kind of thing. So will there be some kind of training?
I had sessions with all the city employees before the Christmas holidays. And it was a whole different presentation.
Okay.
But we talked about that, and what we told them was, don't concentrate that the person's openly carrying a handgun. What you want to watch nowadays is somebody's behavior. Because it's not illegal to have the handgun, don't concentrate on that.
Right.
Concentrate on their behavior.
Exactly.
If their behavior's out of sorts, then certainly, give us a call or something like that. Yes, sir.
Are churches and the public library considered schools under this?
The public library is not. Churches are not unless they have a private school as part of the church, and then only the section of it that is a private school with the laws pertaining to schools be applicable in walking in those buildings. A church has the option to put 3006 and 3007 signs up. I don't know, we don't have a meeting with the Ministerial Alliance or?
The sheriff's office had a meeting with several of the different churches.
And so, I think, this has kind of come about and so new that everybody's whether you're a business or a church, we're just kind of trying to figure out what direction they want to go and stuff like that. I can tell you that since last Friday, January 1, because we started tracking, I asked our folks to track any calls we get pertaining to new gun laws separately, any calls for service that would pertain to something new with the new gun laws. We've had one call. So, you know, for folks that thought the world was gonna drastically change January 1st, you know, it just hadn't. Yes, sir.
Also, people forget that these people with licenses that have all kinds of preventive background checks that nobody else has to go through.
That's right. And it's one of the things that I explained to folks in the last few months that came to see me or wanted to talk and were worried about this, was I said, look, January 1st, it's not a whole new group of people out here carrying handguns. It's the folks that have been carrying handguns for a while. They've had their license. Now they just have the option to carry it out where you can see it. But it's not a whole new group of people. You know, it's our license holder. Yes, sir.
What about the city parks?
City Park is open.
Is this governmental housing thing changing that? Does that apply to the post office?
I don't know about a federal facility. I would ask them.
Yes, it does.
There would be a sign up, huh?
Okay.
The federal government just passed a regulation stating that what states that have concealed carry handgun laws, you can carry it in your car only in the parking lot of a post office. And that just came about this year. Prior to this year, it was actually illegal to drive into the parking lot at the post office with a gun in your car.
See, that's interesting to me, because that's not something we ever deal with. We don't file federal cases or have jurisdiction in the federal courts. So.
You got one back here, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
For places that don't necessarily have it posted, but you walk in and they're not sure that they want you carrying there, can anyone there question to see your license, or is that reserved for police officers?
The demand to see a license would be something only for a law enforcement officer. Now, in any business, the owner or somebody that has apparent authority to act for the owner could ask them to take the gun outside or say, we don't want it in here.
We've seen some debates about churches in particular where they weren't sure they wanted to post it, and yet the pastor or deacon said, well, I'll just ask them to see their license. And I thought, I don't even know if that's something that they can do, or...
They can ask. There's no requirement on the person.
But did I hear someone say there was a form for church issues in particular that we could send someone to or refer
I
them
know
to?
the sheriff's folks held a meeting the other day with some of the churches.
Okay.
And I think they're gonna do it again.
Okay.
I wish I'd known. I would have sent some of ours with questions.
Hospitals and medical clinics?
I'm sorry?
Hospitals and medical clinics?
Hospitals are specifically mentioned in the law like churches are.
Okay.
But they have to have signs.
Okay.
The medical clinic would be treated as a private business, and it would be up to the business to decide.
Okay.
Hospitals do have the option under the law to put up the signs, but it would be up to their staff.
Okay.
In other words, it would only become illegal if they had the signage up. Yes, ma'am.
Sports complexes, even if they're private, like the soccer field, soccer association field.
The soccer fields would probably be up to the soccer association and the appropriate signage. Other sports venues like Tarleton Memorial Stadium, leave your handguns away from there. Whether it's a university game or a high school football game, you wouldn't be allowed there, or baseball games, any kind of athletics events like that.
I work for Tarleton, and I can tell you right now, they're gonna be putting signs all over Tarleton, no handguns allowed. That was done, brought up.
There, and I'm not gonna say a lot about it, there is a campus carry law that's coming into effect August 1st of this year. Understand one thing about it, it will only be concealed. There will never be open carry on a university campus. That's not allowed under the law. So between now and then, what universities across Texas are doing are trying to figure out exactly how they want to implement the law, and the legislature gave them the ability to create some gun-free zones on their campuses. And so that was the reason for the delay in that law going into effect, to give universities ample time to sort through that and figure out how they want to do it. And Carlson folks are doing that now, and I know later this year they'll start putting that information out. Yes, sir.
What constitutes a secured area at an airport? You go to DFW, obviously you know.
Right.
But out here at Stephenville Airport, what is a restricted area?
It wouldn't apply
Okay.
at Stephenville Airport. A secured area would obviously be something that has a checkpoint that you're required to go through.
Okay.
So, yes, sir.
If you were in a place posted 30.07 and for whatever reason somebody saw your handgun, what would be the repercussions of that?
That's a good question. The statute, back then it was only concealed, but a few sessions ago, the legislature changed the language on the concealed carry side and said that in order for us to take action on somebody whose handgun suddenly got seen by somebody, that they had to be intentionally displaying the handgun. So accidentally wouldn't be covered under the law. And so my guess is there had been some enforcement action taken against folks who maybe were somewhere and dropped their car keys, and when they've been over to pick them up, their handgun had showed, and some kind of enforcement action maybe was taken against them. So they made that change in the language for that. Yes.
If you have concealed handgun license, and we now have open carry, if you put that handgun under your shirt, but you still see the outline of it, is it okay?
I'll let y'all answer imprinted.
Well, my son works for security, and he said that now that these laws have changed, that you shouldn't get in trouble if someone can see the outline of your
Out in the general public, I would say no. If you were in a place that ran open carry, I don't know what y'all's opinion would be.
To tell you the truth, I think we'll have to wait on some direction on that, but if you have the gun properly holstered, as you would as if you were carrying it open, I don't think you're gonna have a problem. And then you're still gonna have the burden of showing an intentional display if there's a 30-07 situation or
No.
otherwise not supposed to have open.
Yeah, if they have that sign, I understand that. I'm just saying where concealed carry and open carry are allowed, is somebody gonna freak out if they see the outline of their gun underneath their shirt?
Well, we can't control who freaks out.
There shouldn't be any reason to take action.
Okay.
If you're just out in the general open public.
Nothing to do it.
Sure.
Some security federal buildings. So he's really up on all that. And he told me, he said, "Yeah, this one."
Somebody had emailed and had seen some of the stuff that, we've been training our folks and stuff like that. But their further question was, do the police department or the sheriff's office, have we done training together for active shooter situations? And the answer to that is yes. We always try to work real close together. We have done some cross-training with our folks on multiple occasions for those kind of situations. Yes, open carry is only for folks who are licensed. And that's something we didn't talk about. What was called a concealed handgun license December 31st, applies to both on January 1. You don't have to go get a new license until yours expires and it's time to get it. Now, any new license issued after January 1 would just be called a handgun license. But a CHL holder is good for both, assuming January 1.
When is the next class for to get your license renewed?
I don't know. We don't host any of those. Those are all
You
private
don't have to, you
individuals.
don't have to take a class for renewed, just go online.
Okay. Somebody emailed a question that said their wife carries a firearm, a mini revolver, in a necklace. They are assuming that it is not considered a shoulder holster by law unless it is placed under the shoulder. That is correct. Without seeing that person's get up, I really don't know how to answer that question. I will say this: if whatever it is that the mini revolver is housed in is concealed and nobody can see it, then that would be perfectly legal. It'd be concealed carry. But if it's visible somehow, then yes, I think that would be outside the boundaries of what the law is.
Hey, Chief.
Yes.
Make a quick comment. This is going to take some getting used to from all of us, especially those in law enforcement, because for almost 30 years, every time I've seen someone carrying a pistol where you could see it, there was a badge attached to it somewhere. So I don't think it's going to be a bad thing. I think it's just something we're going to have to get used to. And we're going to be patient as law enforcement when we deal with people that, like you said, might make them, they forget. You know, we're absolutely not out to start punishing people for making mistakes with their new gun laws. So be patient with us, because, you know, I know that there's going to be times where someone is going to see someone carrying a gun in Walmart or H-E-B or wherever, and they're going to panic because they've got their children with them, so they're going to call 911. Well, we have to respond. So we're going to make the gun holder mad because we have to question him or her, and then we're going to make the complainant upset because we didn't do anything about it. So anyway, just be patient with us.
And that was another question that was asked, that was emailed in, was about our dispatch staff. And yes, both of us have kind of issued a whole new set of protocols for our communications staff, because come January 1, when somebody called and said, hey, there's somebody here with a gun, we had to start asking some different and new questions now. And so we've done some training with our dispatch folks too, and kind of issued them some directives on some different questions to ask, kind of like what we were saying earlier about Senior Citizen Center. Let's talk about the behavior. You know, first off is the weapon holster, and then let's start talking about behavior. But we've done that as well.
We need to tell somebody's behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you give us some examples of places in Stephenville where will not be allowed to carry?
The only business that I currently know about is H-E-B, and that's statewide, and it's just open carry.
Whataburger has announced statewide that they're planning on doing it as well, but I haven't seen signs.
Right.
Your banks have open carry only, and I think that's important. Differentiation is the people that are concerned about people bringing guns in, be aware it's been going on for years.
Right.
And there's a difference in what you post, open carry or the other. I think most people will be more reciprocal if you don't want the open carry for some reason. But if you start putting up no concealed carry, it will affect the business of it. But my question is, how many people have you seen carrying open carry since the law?
I yet have not seen anybody.
What is the penalty for carrying open carry if you don't have a license?
That is a class A misdemeanor. It's unlawful carrying of a weapon. So yes, don't carry. And there is a group in Texas. You know, there's some people that aren't happy these laws got passed because they don't like handguns. But there's a whole other group of people that are really upset because they don't think these laws went far enough, and that was the constitutional carry folks that think Texas doesn't have a right to regulate it. So I would encourage any of those folks, please don't test that law. Do it the way Texas wants you to. Get your license and carry it that way. Don't try the argument, I don't have to have anything. That's just not gonna work out. Yes, sir.
That leaves rules to apply to the rifles and automatic weapons.
Rifles and, well, semi-automatic weapons, shotguns, long guns, what we typically call long guns in Texas, they're not regulated by any of this. Long guns is, as long as you're not in a place that somehow legally prevents any kind of firearm, like a bar, court, stuff like that, as long as they're carried in a manner not to calculate alarm, then you're fine. That's, the open carry groups that made the news all over the state, that were going in businesses and walking down roadways with their long guns. You know, they typically had them all slung with the weapon in the back and the barrel pointed down to make sure that they weren't calculated to cause alarm. Because that's kind of an open-ended thing there.
If you're transporting cash across county lines and you're a business owner, and you don't have a concealed handgun license, can you?
Yes, but let me make it real easy for you. Because those laws used to be real confusing, and some people said you had to be carrying money, or you had to be traveling over county lines. Several years ago, the legislature simplified that for law enforcement and the citizens. So if you don't have a license, and you want to carry your gun in your car, A, it's got to be concealed.
Right.
B, you got to be going somewhere. Yeah. You may be around the block. Wherever. You're going somewhere. And the only thing that you've done wrong is the traffic violation you were stopped for, then you're fine.
Gotcha.
Now, if you're DWI, then you're unlawfully carrying the weapon.
Right.
So,
or any other crime.
Right. But they simplified that one because it used to be confusing. So if you're going somewhere, the gun's concealed, the only thing you did wrong is a traffic violation, you're fine. Yes.
If you're carrying a long rifle just out open or carrying firearms in your vehicle, does it matter if it's loaded or not? Okay.
Can you still carry your long rifles in the back windows like you used to in the truck?
Now, we as law enforcement are gonna tell you, if you wanna carry it there while you're driving it, that's fine, but when you park it somewhere, please do something with it so that people don't break in and steal it.
Mine is brought behind the seat.
Don't leave it out there. Yes.
I don't know if this is involved in this or not, but what about insurance for carrying a concealed weapon? I've read a lot about people having insurance. Do you require that for your office?
No, any peace officer that's employed by a governmental entity, there's some bonding and stuff like that that's done through the employing agency or governmental entity. On a personal side of it, I don't know that I'm offered to give any advice there.
There is insurance you can purchase, such
Right.
as Texas Law Shield. I believe that's a group out of Houston that some guys started, and I think that's got very much affordable, but it's just a private.
There are several insurances.
Now, I'm speaking from what I learned in my concealed carry class, but there is, they spoke of insurance is available. I suspect that's what you're speaking of, is the insurance to help defend you should you get into a situation where you get sued or prosecuted. Or both.
Would you suggest that would be a good idea?
I'm not familiar enough with what the insurance covers, and I will tell you this. This is the point made by a gentleman earlier. Both the local and the statewide crime statistics relating to people crimes, particularly violent crimes committed by concealed or now licensed citizens, is negligible. There are almost no violent crimes committed by people who carry the permit. And then even the small number, we're talking single digits of annual incidents involving people who are CHL holders, usually involves domestic, where there's violence inside their own home. So I'm personally not concerned, either as a citizen or as a prosecutor, about crimes being committed by people who hold these licenses. And that, I think that's a point well made earlier, which is we're not dealing with folks who have criminal histories or zero training in how to handle their weapons.
Yes.
I read a story about a year ago. A gentleman was traveling in the state of Maryland and had a Texas license plate. He was a Texas resident. He had a concealed carry permit in the state of Texas. The Maryland State Police officer searched his car based on his information that he had found out that he had a concealed carry license in Texas. Is that information available readily to other states?
Yes.
That you in fact can be, they can find out if you have a license or not?
Yes.
And possibly arrest you or harass you or do anything in that regard?
I'm not gonna speak to the last part of that, because I'm not gonna speak for agencies in another state or how they do it. Now, the information about your handgun license, yes, sir, because they have access to the same network that we run your name through, and so when you get that handgun license, it's added on to your driver's license in the state computer. So when we run your driver's license, if you hadn't showed us your CHL, it would tell us in the return that you are a handgun license holder, to let us know. And so no matter what state runs that, they get that same information. Now, what they do with that, you know, I would say they need to follow the laws of their state and in the United States. Now, what I would encourage you to do if you're going to travel out of state, you go to the Texas Department of Public Safety website. Right on the front page, there's a section that says handgun license. Click on it, it'll take you into another section, which will see an area for reciprocal agreements. Brings up a map of the United States, and you can put your mouse over whatever states you want to put up, and it will tell you whether we have a reciprocal agreement with that state or not. And so I would recommend if you're traveling to other states to do that, so that you know ahead of time whether your license from Texas will be honored in that other state, or if that other state allows handguns.
It doesn't tell you what the law in their state is.
No, it doesn't.
You have to go by.
Right. What I would do at that point is go Google that particular state law. And every state maintains, kind of like Texas does, an official webpage. Texas is called the Texas Constitution and Statutes or something like that, where you can look up either law. Most states have that. So I would do a little homework to find out. Because I remember several years ago, I ran into an open carry guy long before we even thought about having open carry. And in fact, he was going into Peacock for lunch when I was coming out, and he had on a big gun belt full of bullets and a great big pistol. And I said, hold up, let's talk about this for a minute. And he was from Arizona. And at that time, Arizona was only open carry. And we had a very short debate about what he had to do while he was in Texas. And I told him, I said, we absolutely honor your license in Texas, but you have to carry it the way we do, and that's concealed. He argued with me for just a second, and then it kind of made sense to him when I said, look, we can't give you more license than we give our own Texas. So, you know, you're welcome to do it, you just gotta cover it up. But yes, I would encourage you, if you're traveling out of state, do a little research, find out if we have an agreement, and find out what that state's laws are.
Back to like the holster requirements, would a paddle holster be kind of on the iffy, and also is there any type of requirements to have some sort of like safety lock or something on for having open carry?
No, ma'am. What I put up at the very beginning is the actual language out of the statute. It simply says shoulder or belt holster. There are no definitions included, descriptions, or anything. So, unfortunately, some of that will probably be sorted out in our Texas courts over the next short period of time. You know, once again, I can only speak for us here, in that we told our folks to use good common sense and judgment, good judgment, you know, when they encounter stuff. You know, if it looks like a good holster, you know, what it's meant for, remember what the spirit of the law is. Can't speak what you're gonna encounter, you know, in other towns, cities, or places across the state. So I would encourage you to do your best to, anytime with those pictures I showed you at the beginning, with shoulders or belt holsters, so you know for sure from a prosecutorial advice I hear pretty regularly from a belt and suspenders approach that you're more than meeting what the statute says.
Sir?
Yes, ma'am.
If you've never had a gun but you want to purchase one, the proper way to use it, and then do open carry, where do you suggest that we go for training and that sort of thing? Are you having,
There are several folks around that host open training centers. Bill Davidson, where are you?
Tech Pro. Tech Pro.
You have one such service provider in the room. Mr. Davidson is the owner of Tech Pro Shooting Center, and they provide all kinds of classes that
You can find them on the chamber website.
yes. Do what now?
You can find them on the chamber website.
Absolutely.
StephenvilleTexas.org.
If an officer is going to disarm someone, will they give that person instruction
Yes.
like to what they want him to do?
Yes, they're going to tell you, hey, while we're talking, I'm going to disarm you. And they're going to be very clear. I'm going to disarm you. Don't reach for the weapon. They'll probably ask you to do something like, just hold your hands up, and they'll, you know, come take it from you. Don't be surprised if during that they make the weapon safe, if you're carrying it loaded. They separate the bullet from the gun and hand it back to you that way when they're done. Just kind of as a safety thing. And they may not. It'll kind of, like I said, that'll depend on the situation or their judgment. The way that that's written, it says the officer can do it anytime that the officer feels like it's appropriate for their safety, your safety, or somebody else's safety. So you may encounter one that does, and then for whatever reason encounter another one that doesn't. Yes.
I'm curious, your advice for a good Samaritan in an active shooting when the police come, and God forbid a good Samaritan is defending the public?
That's a very tough question. My advice for you, if you're in an active shooter situation and law enforcement comes in, to get in. We train our officers in active shooter situations to go to the gunfire and stop it. Now, when they come into that active shooter situation, all they know is the bullets are being fired. They're not going to know you're a good Samaritan. So if you're in that situation and you see law enforcement come in, you know, very quickly stop doing what you're doing. Because there's just no way to differentiate that in that kind of moment, in that kind of situation. Unfortunately, throughout the history of law enforcement, we, in different agencies across the country, have some bad history within our own organizations of high-stress situations. Maybe undercover officers being shot in situations because they weren't recognized or
I was just gonna suggest we attended a praise seminar, and they covered that, and it was very informative. And I just encourage anyone else to, I know that some of them are held here about sometime in Stephenville,
Yes.
but we enjoyed that, and it did touch on that.
Okay.
Very basic stuff, but informative.
Right.
Praise, C-R-A-S-E.
If a business permits open carry and an individual employee of the business is not comfortable with an open carry customer, is there anything in the law that provides or doesn't provide that the employee individually could just ask politely if that customer would secure their firearm?
There's nothing in the law that covers that. It would be kind of up to your individual policies of your employees, whether you want them to do that or not. They can ask, and then it would be kind of on you at that point, if the person says no, what you want to do as a business and not what direction you're going. You give them the ability to speak for you and ask that person to leave at that point. If you do that, then you would be in a new relationship.
I guess as a follow-up to that, in an off-site situation, specifically to my situation, is test drive. Is there anything that applies to that situation, leaving the premise with an employee of the business?
There's nothing covered under these statutes that would, there again, you could set your own policy and just say, if you're gonna come do a test drive with us, we don't want you to bring your handgun. And it wouldn't be something that we would get involved in. It would just simply be, you're not gonna get to go on a test drive, unless you comply with what we're asking.
But that would not require a posting.
No, because it wouldn't, a violation of that wouldn't be a violation of the law. It would just be them not complying with what your policy is on test drives.
I may, Chief, a thought on the intersection of different fundamental rights that we have. You know, the Bill of Rights gives us fundamental protections against government infringement. Like the First Amendment protects our freedom to exercise our religion and to speak, and that restricts the government's ability to sanction us for exercising our religion or exercising our freedom of speech. Well, likewise, the Second Amendment is a fundamental right. But there is nothing in the Constitution that keeps a property owner, a private property owner, from telling you you can't practice Islamic prayer in the checkout line of HEB, and there's nothing that says that prohibits a private business owner from saying we don't want you to have your open carry or even concealed carry firearm on our premises. What these laws do is they set the criteria for when government can get involved to enforce those private rights. So if HEB wants to prohibit open carry on their premises, they certainly have the right to do so. The government, we're restricted on where we can ban open carry or concealed carry, but HEB can prohibit that. But if they want the government to come and enforce it through a criminal law, they must post these signs or give individual notice. So my interpretation of the law as it would apply to the situation raised by Mr. Bruner is, if you're in your private property and you are in control of that property and you're not comfortable with someone carrying a weapon on that property, you have the right to ask them not to secure the weapon or remove the weapon, or even remove him or herself. But we're not going to charge that person with a crime unless and until you've given them these notices.
And I don't know that you could give notices
It would be a challenge, but
right.
There would be an argument over whether the car is yours, I guess. But if you're not comfortable with an open carry, I'd ask them before you get in the car.
Chief, with that, I had a lady ask the other day, because these are huge, hideous signs when you do them the way the state makes you do them. She was asking, can I put it in a main entrance? And I was asking her what she meant. Well, like Hastings has two separate entrances because she stick it in the middle. So she didn't have to use our window space.
And that's an interesting question. The 3006 law, the concealed handgun trespass law, says the sign must be posted in a conspicuous place visible to the public, period. The 3007 law says it must be posted in a conspicuous place visible to the public at each entrance. So they're different. I would tell you, probably from my perspective and from theirs, follow 3007, put them at each entrance, whatever sign. The better the signage, the easier it is to take enforcement action if we need to, because if you only put it in one spot, then somebody says, well, I came in another side, that's different. I wish we didn't have the difference in the language in those two, but we do. But our advice to business owners would be follow the 3007, and no matter which sign you put up, put them in all entrances. Yes.
So in a case like St. Gobain, if we post that as you're coming on the premises, we have two methods where you enter our property. If we post those coming into the property, is that sufficient, or do we have to do it?
I would do entrances to the building. I don't know that they defined entrance in the law, but I'm pretty sure they were speaking of physical entrances to buildings, as opposed to entrance on a property right in.
They did the premises. Premises. Excluded premises.
But I don't know if that doesn't cover process, that's government though, not private. So my advice would be sticking to your physical door, around your physical door entrances, would be the best.
And that is, I see you have 4 up there, that is Spanish and English, that's the requirement?
Yes, has to be Spanish and English, and Spanish and English has to be together. Don't put English, especially if you have big wide entrances, don't put English over here and Spanish over here. They kind of got to be together.
Yes.
So.
Some of the anti-gun groups have promised that they're going to do swatting every time they see an open carrier. You can call in a 911 call.
We have not experienced that yet, and I hope we do not. There again, that's where our training protocols with our dispatchers will play a key part to that, asking those specific questions we told them to ask. Because if it's somebody calling and making it up, they're probably not going to be able to answer some of those, or some of those questions will probably cause them to hesitate and have to think about some answers. Yes, ma'am.
Like it's a violation if you're caught driving without a license. Does it coincide? Is it similar if you don't tangibly have your license on you, if you happen to, have to display it?
The law, each part of the laws that cover this say that you're carrying a license and carrying a handgun. So I think it's the intent you're supposed to carry it with you. But that's where maybe the good part of it being attached to your driver's license. So that if the officer runs your driver's license information, they can find out that yes, you do in fact have a handgun license. So there again, that's where we ask them to work with you and not maybe take some action there when there's none needed.
I got a question for you. I got CDLs and mine don't show my CDLs. Because you're not allowed to have a weapon on a commercial vehicle.
Not necessarily true.
How do you figure? I've been driving 26 years and they told me no kind of weapon. The only kind of weapon you're allowed to have on a commercial vehicle is a flare gun, and that is it.
Well, you just said they told you. The law
told
trumps
me
that, but where you get in trouble with a commercial vehicle is when you start crossing state lines.
Well, that's what I did. I run 48 states plus Canada.
Well, but see, there's commercial vehicles that don't leave the city of Stephenville, there's commercial, they don't leave the state, there's some that go across country.
I don't want to get into a debate about the Federal Motor Carrier Act, because I don't know anything about the Federal Motor Carrier Act.
Well, that's why I was saying on the license, it don't show.
I have to look at that, because every license I've ever run, and I know we've run, it shows it, whether it's been a CDL or not. It's attached. Now maybe they didn't tell you it was or something like that, but I've never not had any kind of driver's license where the person had a handgun license and had it not shown. Now, as far as requirements on commercial motor vehicles, Trooper Kenneth Pratt was the commercial motor vehicle enforcement officer for DPS.
Where can local businesses get a copy of the signs? Can they make their own, or is the police department or sheriff's office handing these out?
We're not handing these out. These are for you to look at. We are handing out the sections of the law that tell you specifically what your sign has to say.
Okay.
And it says on there, it gives you all the requirements, that it's got to be 1-inch block letters, that it has to be contrasting colors, English and Spanish, and have the exact language on it. So you'll grab one of those handouts, it'll cover all of that. What else?
And you can find local sign companies on the chamber website. Sorry, I have to.
What is that website again?
Back on where you cannot carry, like state parks.
State parks are not specifically listed as one of the places that weapons are prohibited.
Okay.
I would probably encourage you to go to Texas Parks and Wildlife's website and look and see what restrictions they may or may not have.
And does that apply to like a rifle and a scabbard?
No. There again, no, there's nothing in the law that specifically says you can't carry firearms in state parks, at least in the penal code under all those other places I listed. It's all found in one of two sections of law right next to each other. And the state parks are not listed there, but I would look at Texas Parks and Wildlife's website, because they may have some different restrictions in different state parks.
I'm here representing the museum, and we're kind of a gray area. Any suggestions? I'm happy to take this conversation offline. It may not be something that everybody wants to hear, but as I understand it, the museum owns the buildings. The land, however, belongs to the city. So, again, I can take the question offline, but it's kind of one of those areas that I'd like clarified so that...
We might have to do some research into that depending on what the museum wanted to do.
Okay.
So that...
Okay.
All right, maybe we'll start wrapping it up. I want to tell you how much I appreciate all of y'all coming out tonight. This is awesome.